For months. That's how long I was unconscious in a hospital bed, while my friends were busy destroying the man who nearly killed me. When I finally opened my eyes, I wasn't just a broke college kid anymore. I was $8 million richer, and my landlord was heading to prison. They say when you come from nothing, you learn to make do with what you've got. And I did. Born and raised in a one-stoplight town in rural Texas, I knew the meaning of humble beginnings. My mom worked 2 jobs and still managed to put dinner on the table. My dad wasn't around, just a name on a birth certificate and a couple of hazy memories I've outgrown. All I had was grit, books, and the dream of something more. Getting into the University of Pennsylvania felt like a lightning strike, surreal, unbelievable. I remember the night I got the acceptance letter like it was yesterday. My hands trembled. The screen glowed in our cramped kitchen. My mom cried. She said, "You're going to make it out of here." And I believed her. I had to. I'd earned a scholarship, full ride, because I knew how to outwork the odds. But scholarships don't cover everything. Not rent, not food, not the kind of life most Ivy Leaguers take for granted. So I got a part-time job bussing tables. Weekends were spent cleaning at a student center, and some nights, I'd help stock shelves at a corner store. My apartment? A rickety third-floor walk-up off-campus, the cheapest I could find. Roaches, flickering lights, creaking floors. The walls were thin enough to hear someone's heartbreak 2 rooms over. But it was mine, and it was enough until it wasn't. The landlord, a man named Harold Frick, ran that place like it was a third-world prison. I'm not exaggerating. He refused to fix anything. The heating barely worked through the Philly winters. The water ran brown for days sometimes. And when tenants complained, he shrugged it off. Most of us were broke students or minimum wage workers.
Immigrants.
No one wanted trouble, especially not legal trouble. So we kept our heads down. That was our mistake. I remember the night everything changed. I'd just come back from a closing shift, exhausted. My boots were soaked. Rain had poured through the broken window in the hallway again. I dropped my backpack, peeled off my jacket, and turned on the lights. Nothing. Blackout. Again. I sighed and headed to the bathroom to wash my face. That's when I heard the crack. Then the rush. Water burst through the ceiling like a broken dam. A pipe had exploded above me. I slipped, hard. My head hit the ceramic sink on the way down. And then nothing. When I woke up, the world was different. My muscles felt like stone. My throat burned. My head throbbed like it held every second I'd lost. I blinked slowly against the fluorescent hospital lights. For months, they told me. For months. Coma. Trauma. Brain swelling. They weren't sure I'd ever wake up. But I did. And when I did, I wasn't alone. My friends, Sarah, Mike, Tony, and Jason, were at my bedside. They looked older, more tired, but they smiled when I opened my eyes. They didn't waste time with small talk. Sarah leaned in and whispered, "We got him." I didn't understand at first. My brain felt like a scrambled mess, disoriented and profoundly confused. A common side effect of waking from a coma. My speech was slurred, my thoughts disorganized, and I struggled to connect their words to any reality I knew. The sterile white of the hospital room, the constant beeping of machines, the unfamiliar faces of nurses and doctors. It was all a jarring assault on my senses. I was weak, my body a stranger to me, and the simplest movements felt like monumental tasks. They had to feed me through a tube, turn me in bed to prevent bed sores, and help with basic bodily functions. My eyes would sometimes wander uncontrollably, or fixate briefly on a single point, unable to follow movement. I was in a minimally conscious state, partially aware but unable to fully comprehend or respond. Over the next few days, they filled me in, piece by agonizing piece, patiently recounting the impossible story of what had happened while I was gone. Each revelation hit me like a physical blow, even as my mind struggled to retain the information. I was a broke college kid who had gone to sleep in a dingy apartment and woken up a millionaire in a hospital bed. The contrast was jarring, almost grotesque. The muted, sterile colors of the hospital room seemed to clash with the vibrant, overwhelming news of my new reality. Turns out they hadn't just prayed while I slept. They got to work. Sarah, with her quiet fire, was the one who started it. She'd begged the hospital to see the apartment photos the EMTs took. They were horrifying. Mold, rot, exposed wires, a broken window that let the rain pour in. The coroner's report on me, she said, read like a disaster inspection. This wasn't just an accident. It was a crime waiting to happen, a clear case of extreme negligence. Her outrage, Mike's anger, Tony's sharp mind, and Jason's meticulousness. They were the callers to action, the ones who saw the injustice and refused to let it stand. Tony, always the tech whiz, had a brother who coded an app that tracked violations in rental buildings. When they plugged in Frick's name, it lit up like a Christmas tree. His name came up again and again, tied to over a dozen properties, all with similar, if not worse, conditions than mine. This digital trail of ignored citations and silenced complaints became powerful evidence of a pattern of willful neglect. Mike, the most outwardly emotional of us, channeled his anger into action. He started interviewing neighbors, uncovering a litany of grievances against Frick. Jason, meticulous and thorough, pulled every property record he could find, revealing Frick's history. Ignored citations, silenced complaints, buried lawsuits. This collective effort of gathering witness statements, photographs, and official documents was the backbone of the case. They were building a case that went beyond simple landlord-tenant issues. This was about criminal culpability. For Frick to go to prison, his actions had to be far more egregious than typical negligence. The nearly killed me aspect meant his disregard for safety had to constitute criminal negligence, reckless endangerment, or even criminal assault. The burst pipe, the unaddressed hazards, the documented history of violations, it all painted a picture of a landlord who knowingly created and maintained conditions that posed a severe risk of serious injury or death. He was aware of the structural issues, the faulty plumbing, the inadequate security, and he intentionally chose to ignore them to save costs. This willful neglect, this complete disregard for human life, was what made him a criminal, not just a bad landlord. Sarah's dad, a high-powered lawyer, agreed to take the case pro bono. He saw it not just as a slam-dunk personal injury case, but as a chance to expose a systemic issue of housing injustice. He was the mentor, the guide, who would help my friends navigate the labyrinthine legal system. They filed a class action lawsuit, which meant that other tenants who had suffered similar abuses could join. This was crucial for the $8 million richer outcome, as such a large sum for a single personal injury case is rare unless it involves significant punitive damages or multiple victims. Tenants, former employees, and even a maintenance man Frick had fired for calling the city came forward. This collective action against a powerful oppressor echoed the social justice narratives seen in films like Erin Brockovich and Norma Ray. The legal process was long and arduous, far from the speedy trials seen on TV. My friends and Sarah's dad's legal team meticulously worked through the discovery phase, which is the backbone of any legal proceeding. I learned about it in fragments during my slow, painful recovery as my friends tried to explain the complex steps. They conducted formal, recorded interviews under oath with key witnesses, a process called depositions. I imagined Sarah's dad, sharp and unblinking, cornering Frick's associates, forcing them to reveal the truth. They deposed former tenants, the fired maintenance man, and even some of Frick's former employees. These sessions were vital for assessing credibility and preserving testimony, ensuring no surprise witnesses could derail the trial later. They sent written questions called interrogatories to Frick and his company, demanding answers about their maintenance policies, financial records, and knowledge of the hazardous conditions. This helped clarify essential facts and refine their legal strategies. Then came the requests for production demands for documents, maintenance logs, inspection reports, financial records, internal communications. This was where they uncovered the magical gotcha evidence. Not through a sudden, dramatic reveal in court, but through painstaking research that exposed inconsistencies and deliberate cover-ups. They found evidence of bribed inspectors and pressured officials, confirming the systemic corruption. Finally, subpoenas were issued, court orders compelling individuals to testify or provide documents that might otherwise be inaccessible. including expert testimonies on structural integrity and public health. This wasn't a one-man show. It was a collaborative effort, a team of dedicated individuals working tirelessly behind the scenes, sifting through mountains of paperwork, interviewing reluctant witnesses, and strategizing every move. The trial didn't take long. Sarah's father, the lead attorney, presented the overwhelming evidence. The horrifying photos of my apartment, the app data tracking Frick's violations, the testimonies of dozens of victims, and the damning documents that showed Frick's deliberate neglect. Even the bribed inspectors, under oath, had to admit their complicity. I wasn't there for the opening statements, but my friends recounted how Sarah's dad laid out the case, painting a clear picture of Frick's greed and the suffering it caused. Then came the witnesses. I heard about the former tenant, a single mother, who tearfully described how her child developed chronic respiratory issues due to mold in their apartment, a condition Frick had ignored for years. The maintenance man, fired for trying to report Frick, bravely testified about being ordered to make cosmetic fixes instead of real repairs, to hide the true extent of the decay. An expert on building codes detailed how my apartment, and many others, violated basic safety regulations, making it a death trap. The defense tried to discredit them, of course. During cross-examination, Frick's lawyers attempted to paint the tenants as disgruntled, the maintenance man as a liar with a grudge, and the expert as biased. They asked leading questions, trying to force yes or no answers that would undermine the testimony. But Sarah's dad was ready. He used redirect examination to allow the witnesses to explain, to fix any misleading impressions, and to reiterate the truth. He didn't rely on theatrics, but on the cumulative weight of evidence and the raw, undeniable truth of the victims' stories. The courtroom drama wasn't about shouting matches or surprise witnesses. It was about the slow, methodical dismantling of a powerful man's empire, piece by agonizing piece. Sarah's father stood in court and painted Frick as the villain he was, a man who prioritized profit over human lives, a wrong guy, abusing his power against the little guys. The moral dilemma was clear. Would the jury uphold the law and deliver justice? Or would they allow a powerful individual to escape accountability for his criminal actions? And the jury agreed. Frick was sentenced to 5 years for fraud and criminal negligence. Fines, property seizures, reputation in ruins. And then came the settlement. $8 million. That was the figure. $4 million in punitive damages, awarded as punishment for Frick's extreme negligence, and the rest in compensatory damages to cover my medical bills, therapy, living expenses, and future education. My hospital bills were covered. Therapy, living expenses, future education, and enough left to make sure my mom never worked 2 jobs again. The $8 million richer part was the hardest to process. It wasn't earned. It was a consequence of a near-fatal injury. This sudden, immense influx of wealth triggered what I later learned was sudden wealth syndrome, SWS. My physical recovery was slow and grueling. After the initial confusion, I entered a confusional state, where I was often agitated, restless, and easily frustrated. My sleep patterns were disrupted, and sometimes I struggled to differentiate between what was real and what wasn't. I needed intensive physical therapy to regain strength and coordination, occupational therapy to relearn daily tasks, and speech therapy to improve my communication. My brain injury left me with lingering cognitive problems, difficulty with memory, concentration, problem-solving, and even decision-making. But the psychological impact was just as profound. A deep sense of isolation settled over me. The pressures of this unexpected fortune triggered depressive moods, making me distance myself from former friends and family. Could they truly understand what it felt like to have this money, this burden? I worried about losing it, about making the wrong decisions. A profound sense of guilt settled over me. Why me? Why did I deserve this windfall when others in Frick's building suffered and got nothing, or far less? It felt like survivor's guilt, a punishment for my good fortune. This guilt sometimes led to self-destructive thoughts, a feeling that I didn't deserve it, that I needed to undermine this achievement. Normal activities that once brought me joy now felt uninteresting, leaving me feeling empty and disconnected from my peers. With so many options suddenly open, invest, spend, save, help my family, continue my education, I found myself unable to make any decision at all. The sheer volume of choices was overwhelming, leading to a paralyzing fear of making the wrong move. Who was I now? Not the poor Texas kid with scuffed sneakers. Not just a victim. I was the guy who survived and won. But that wasn't me. Fame wasn't what I wanted. Justice was. Safety. Dignity. I never asked for a fight, but I was proud we didn't stay silent. This internal conflict, this struggle to reconcile my past identity with my dramatically altered present, became my new battle. My friends Sarah, Mike, Tony, and Jason were my anchors. They had been the detectives and lawyers in my absence, going above and beyond. But even with them, things changed. They had lived through those 4 months actively fighting while I was passive. I had to piece together their sacrifices, their anger, their determination. Their loyalty was unwavering, but the dynamic shifted. I was no longer just their friend. I was the recipient of their monumental effort, the symbol of their victory. Rebuilding those relationships, learning to communicate my new fears and anxieties, was a slow process, requiring empathy and patience from all of us. The university let me resume classes. They gave me a dorm this time, near the center of campus. When I returned, the president himself shook my hand, said he admired my resilience. I smiled, but inside, I was still reeling. People started looking at me differently. Not as the poor Texas kid with scuffed sneakers, but as the guy who survived and won. I didn't know how to feel about it. Fame wasn't what I wanted. Justice was. Safety. Dignity. I never asked for a fight, but I'm proud we didn't stay silent. Now, every time I walk past the old building, which is now condemned, I feel something I can't quite describe. Sadness for the lives affected, rage at Frick's callousness, and immense gratitude for my friends who stood up when I couldn't. It's a physical manifestation of my journey, a reminder that sometimes justice comes late, but when it does, it's loud, it's clear, and it changes everything. I woke up 4 months later, but I didn't come back the same. I came back stronger, but the journey to truly understand and embrace that strength, and to find my new purpose in this transformed world, is still ongoing.
Thanks for watching. If the story meant something to you, consider subscribing. We've got more like this, stories that don't ask for sympathy, just honesty.